start our board meeting today, August the 6th. I'm going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone please rise. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So good evening, everyone. I'll do a short roll call for the people up here in attendance. I have Laura Newman, Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mr. Jim Tampolini, Board Trustee, Mr. Jared Behar, Board Trustee, Dr. Donald James, Superintendent of Schools, myself, Steve Hartman, Janine DiGioramo, Board Vice President, Mary Jo Masiello, Board Trustee, Jean Bernowski, District Counsel, Mary Harvey, District Counsel, and Mary Jean Buddy, District Clerk. I'd also like to thank all the administration that came out here tonight for this meeting, as well as the public as well. Okay. At this time, I have, in addition to the agenda, I'd like to have a motion to move the administrative report after the board business. Motion made by Mrs. DiGioramo, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Okay. At this point, the Vice President will read a board structure statement.
I would like to read a concise statement regarding the structure of the public board meeting. This meeting has two opportunities for public comment. One at the beginning of the meeting where members of the public can comment on specific items on the agenda only, and one at the end of the meeting where members of the public can comment on other items relating to the school district matters. Please note that the board would like the community to be aware that these opportunities are for public comment only and are not intended to be a question and answer session or opportunity for public debate. Questions may be responded to at a later date and or at the next available board meeting. The public comment does not allow for any kind, both positive and negative, about a specific employee, particularly as it relates to his or her job performance. Any matters related to specific students, including but not limited to disciplinary matters, will not be discussed. Community members are interested in sharing their thoughts and concerns. The board makes available a multitude of venues for discussions with the community, including budget workshops and community-based meetings that are attended by the administration and Board of Education members. In conclusion, the board will adhere to these policies and structures set forth in an effort to allow for a productive, meaningful experience for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiGioramo. Okay. At this point, I'm going to open it up for public participation on comments on specific agenda items only. Please come to the microphone, and this is only regarding specific items that are on the agenda.
I see on the agenda it says that you received emails from persons in the public. Are you going to read those emails tonight?
No, I'm not getting any specific emails from the public. We've acknowledged all the receipt of the emails.
So you're only going to acknowledge receipt, you're not going to read them?
It's not been every board policy to read any email that's been sent to us in the past. It's not part of our current policy.
Okay.
Anyone else regarding specific agenda items? Okay. As always, we'd like to thank the donations. The administration recommends that the board accept the following donation. A donation from Mr. and Mrs. Alan Leon for items for the upkeep and continual care of the Commack High School greenhouse and garden courtyard. These items had an approximate value of $200. Okay. So, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jean. I guess I got it. Going back to F, so I'm going to acknowledge the following receive the following correspondences. Communication received on July 15, 2015 from Mr. Peter Wunsch, the Commack Union Free School District Drivers Administration Program. Communications received July 27, 2015 from Yvonne Cates regarding zoning violations, Hop Industrial Park. Communication received July 13, 2015 from Mr. Dan Fusco, the Commack Union Free School District Audit. Communication received July 31st, 2015 Chris Volpe, Commack Board of Education response to the New York State Controller's audit of the Commack School District. Item E, Commack communication received August 1st, 2015, Larry Schulman audit. And last communication received July 3rd, 2015, Frank Bartles controller's audit. At this point, I'd like to have a motion to accept the consent agenda items labeled H, I, J. Sorry? I did the correspondence. I jumped out of order.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. H, I, J, K, L, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and M. And which there is none. Motion made by Mr. Tampolini, seconded made by Mr. Behar. Discussions? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Items removed from the consent agenda. The administration recommends that the Board of Education approve the June 30th budget transfers. I also like to acknowledge that there is we're going to go into some probationary appointments. That in the audience we have Natalie Myers, who's getting appointed as reading, so I'd like to thank her for coming out today. Okay. We have a resolution for probationary appointments as labeled item number 2. Can I get a motion? Made by Mrs. Masiello, seconded by Mr. DiGiolamo. Discussions? All in favor? Motion carried. Okay. The Board of Education is requested to acknowledge the receipt of the Internal Claims Auditor's Monthly Update. We also will be acknowledging receipt of the Committee on Special Education meetings, dates labeled herein. In addition, the Board of Education is requested to acknowledge receipt of statements for professional services rendered from the month of June 2015 from Nara Bernosky for a statement of professional services, as well as the administration recommends the board acknowledge the following financial reports: budget transfer report, CD reports. Okay. I don't think I need any motions. I don't. There's all acknowledging receipts of all these items.
Mr. President, the district clerk does not have motions on the donation
Oh, I'm sorry.
and the budget transfers.
Oh, it wasn't labeled in my.
No, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't want the meeting to close without.
Oh, no,
motion.
I'm sorry. So could I get a motion to accept the donations as made by Mr. and Mrs. Allen Leon? Motion made by Mr. Behar, seconded by Mr. Tampolini. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. As well as, can I get a motion to accept the second item you said was the transfers?
Budget transfers.
Budget transfers. Motion made by Mrs. DiGiolamo, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay? No problem. Thank you. Before we get into administration report, the Board of Education, the Commack Union Free School District shall hold a regular meeting on Thursday, September 10, 2015, at 6:30 p.m. at the Hubs Administration Building, 480 Clay Pits Road, East Northport. It is anticipated the board will make a motion for the purpose of adjourning into executive session at this time. And at the 8 p.m., the board will reconvene in public session for the purpose of holding its regular meeting. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. James and administration for the administrative report.
Thank you. So at this time, Mrs. Newman will be conducting a review of the New York State Comptroller's audit, which figure most of you have either read about in the newspaper or seen an email regarding. She will review it in brief. We just had a detailed review with the audit committee. The next step would be for the district to create a corrective action plan for some of the items that are included in that report. That will then go before the audit committee and then approval by the board moving forward. At this time, Mrs. Newman will review in brief the audit report, and then I will review the advocacy efforts of the school district, and then we'll open for public comment. Mrs. Newman?
Thank you, Dr. James. As Dr. James had stated, we have been audited by the New York State Comptroller. That report was just recently released. I just wanted to review what the process had been for the Board of Education. Last September, we received notice that we were to be audited. The Comptroller is supposed to audit all school districts every 5 years. The audit fieldwork began December of 2014 and fieldwork concluded March 2015. At that time, the controller informed the district that there were only 2 areas that their scope would be, and that would be financial condition of the district as well as fuel inventory. On June 24th, the controller did conduct an exit conference with district officials at district office along with the board president. The first area that the controller reviewed was the fuel inventory, and he did find that this was an area that the district needed to review and to make changes. The school district agreed with those recommendations, and we took immediate and swift steps to improve the internal controls of this area. To that end, the school district changed the assignment of duties with respect to the recording, monitoring, and the reconciling of fuel inventory. Previous staff was relieved of those duties. Excuse me. The Director of Facilities actively reviews the reconciliation every 10 working days, and significant discrepancies, and all and any discrepancies will be brought to his attention daily. To date, there have been none. A video surveillance system was installed to monitor the area, and also a fleet fuel control system has been purchased, installed, and it is providing secure employee, vehicle, as well as dispenser controls. District officials are presently preparing a recommendation for the Board of Education to adopt written policies and procedures as suggested in order to codify the above steps that have been mentioned. The second objective of the audit was to determine if the board and district officials adopted reasonable budgets, thereby adequately managing the district's financial condition. The controller stated that budgets are to be developed based on prior year's operating results, past expenditure trends, anticipated future needs, and available information related to projected changes in significant revenues or expenditures. In the years examined, the controller presented a chart showing the adopted budget, actual expenditures, the difference of budget and actual. The controller then added a column that took the unspent column and divided it by actual expenditures to illustrate the relationship between the two. Typically, one would compare the unspent as a percentage of the budget. We have not seen the controller routinely prepare in this fashion, so we have added an illustration to explain to the board how this calculation was done. Had the calculation been to compare the unspent expenditures to the adopted budget, the percentages would have been lower. However, that was not what the controller chose to do. The controller report explains fund balance is resources remaining from prior fiscal years, which would typically be surpluses. The controller also explains that the 4% limitation on school districts come under Real Estate Property Tax Law 1318. Any excess over the 4% should be used to lower property taxes or to increase reserves where necessary, and it may also be used to pay down debt. The controller report states that the district reported year-end unrestricted funds in the general fund at levels that essentially complied with the 4% limit. The district's independent auditors, Cullen and Danowski, concurred with the controller report in every year examined and audited. Their audit report can be found on our website, and we have included a link to their report in this presentation. The controller has also issued guidance to all municipalities on how to calculate compliance with Real Property Tax Law 1318 and the 4% limitation. The controller also issues guidance to school districts, one of which is the fiscal stress indicator. He releases this in January of each fiscal year. In January of 2015, the New York State Controller released Commack's fiscal stress indicator and provided some information, one of which is the chart that you see before you, where the controller states that our fund balance, our unrestricted fund balance, was under the 4% limitation. In addition, the controller then compared Commack to Long Island districts, downstate districts, and other medium-sized districts, which we are considered medium-sized. And in each case, we were lower than all those other areas combined. This full stress report was given to the Board of Education at the February 2015 meeting and is on our website. If any member of the public would like to view the entire report, it is there for your review. The Controller's report also showed the calculation of applying real property tax law 1318 and that the district complies with the 4% each year. The Controller then added the district's appropriated fund balance and reserves to show that that percentage compared to the ensuing year's budget. The Controller, in looking at appropriated fund balance, the Controller then stated that the district appropriated nearly $24 million of fund balance. Here on this chart, the district has shown those same appropriated fund balances in 2011-12 to be applied to 12-13 in the amount of $5.7 million. In 2012-2013, almost $9.7 million to be applied to the 2013-14, and in 13-14 applied $8.3 million towards the 2014-15. We've totaled that here as well so that we can show you where the $24 million in the report comes from. Here the district also has shown those same appropriated fund balances as I just stated, and also the reserves, which total more than $1 million. Those reserves were also applied to offset the tax levy in each year. In the 3 years that the Controller chose to audit, almost $25 million were given back to homeowners. Life under the tax cap. For the past 4 years, all districts in New York State come under the tax cap limitations. Since those tax cap laws were implemented, the district could have raised taxes more than 12%. The Board of Education levied less than 7.5%. But let me please repeat that. The district could have raised taxes by double digits under the existing tax cap laws. The Board of Education adopted tax levies that were significantly lower than the tax cap. Because the district appropriated or gave back funds that were not spent and saved, the Board of Education was able, therefore, to levy taxes that were significantly below the statutory tax cap limits. In fact, more than $4 million was not paid by the homeowners in the district because of the long-range planning that the district has been doing. By doing this, the Board of Education has saved the residents from that additional tax burden, which is cumulative and increases as future years go on. The next steps. Now that the report has been formally issued, the corrective action plan is to be crafted by the district and also in conjunction with the audit committee. The audit committee did meet prior to this meeting, and we will be meeting again to review and put into motion those corrective action plans, which must be submitted to the New York State Controller's Office within 90 days of the report being issued. Our next budget development process for the 2016-17 year officially begins with our first public board workshop, which is on March 10th, 2016. And with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. James.
So as Mrs. Newman indicated, regarding the fuel inventory, there was corrective action taken, which will also then be presented to the board and to the Comptroller's Office regarding corrective action related to underspending the budget, or as the Comptroller indicates, overestimating. That'll be part and parcel of the correction action plan, but then also the budget development process, whereby we review every budget code, make a determination in public, provide detail on that. So in addition to the corrective action plan and the things stated by Mrs. Newman, there's other work that's been occurring around this particular report and other reports in the areas of advocacy. So as you can see by the review of the information presented, there is some conflicting information to the field. A field memo guidance that says, in essence, applied fund balance is not to be counted toward the 4%, yet in the report it is counted toward the 4%. So that we get two different messages, one in the field guidance memo from the comptroller's office and another. Other districts receive different types of reports, so the advocacy efforts, and we've begun that with the comptroller's office, various elected officials. So we spoke to the audit committee about this today. Guidance to from the comptroller's office regarding underspending, consistency and presentations of data and information. The data and information is inconsistent. The one way the districts get information about this is to review comptroller's audit reports and try to glean from that information so that we can advise the board. That's been inconsistent. In addition to that, one of the most significant issues that we grapple with is at life under the tax cap, and we've been meeting with legislative leaders advocating for legislation legalizing the development of additional reserves to cover increased mandated expenses. So when people say, well, if you underspend your budget, why is that? Because we allow for expenses that we absolutely expect, and when they don't occur, we return those funds to the district. One other way to support that would be through reserves. For example, a teacher's retirement system reserve, which doesn't exist right now. For illustration, TRS rates went from 6.19 in 2009-10 to 16.25 in 2013-14. That was an increase of almost $7 million. In addition, we have just heard that the actuarial tables were redone and TRS may actually increase next year. This year it went down, meaning this budget that we're entering. The following year it could increase, which will obviously have a significant impact on our budget with no reserve to support that. Special education, during the budget development process, mandated services, changes as needs for special ed students change, and that's normal. Students are engaged and parents are going through the CSE process, and those things shift. The budget's already developed, so how do we allow for those costs? How do we allow for costs for students moving in, a reserve in that area, which has been presented by Assembly folks upstate. I did speak with the local officials down here about that. And then one for health insurance. The Family Medical Leave Act has created some issues for us. When staff members go out, they qualify for family medical leave. If they have sick time accruals, they get paid. They also get benefits. We then have to hire staff members. That's very difficult for us. And of course, Obamacare and how do we manage those costs. So we're looking for legal reserves in those three areas, and that's our advocacy. Of course, the problem there is then funding those reserves. Under the tax cap, and next year's projection is under 1. It could be as low as 0. How do we actually fund those reserves? So that becomes part of our issue. So that's the advocacy component. We've started those meetings, and we will continue in that regard and report back to the board. So at this time, I turn it back to the Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much for the administrative report. Does anyone have any questions regarding the administrative report at this time?
I have a couple of comments. Well, that was something. I think the best way to characterize what's being represented here by the district is basically the essential putting lipstick on a pig. They actually, I believe, think that the residents of this community are idiots because they're basically contending by overtaxing us year after year, they're actually saving us money. So if that makes sense to somebody, well, I don't know what to say. But I just want to go over some of the points that were made in the district's response. Because I think there's a lot of misrepresentations, to say the least. And I think you can't get distracted by all the noise about whether or not the appropriated fund balance should be included as part of the 4% under the real property law. The real question here is why do we continue to run these multi-million-dollar surpluses year after year. If this was a one-off or a two-off, and the number got lower each year, you could understand that. And certainly nobody's saying that you got to come to the penny on these budgets, as I've often said. But the amount that we're exceeding the budget by, that we're underspending the budget by, is just unacceptable. And that, to me, indicates that it's intentional. It's intentional also, I believe, because you can see that this is going on for a number of years. The controller only looked at 3, but actually it's going on in more like 6, all right? Because it started the year before in 2011, 3 years including what the controller looked at. This year we're going to have another $7 or $8 million surplus, and because they refuse to change their practice, next year's budget also is going to have a surplus because it's based on the prior year's budget and the same strategy that they've been using in the past. So this isn't, as the superintendent has characterized in his statement to the public, a philosophical difference. What this is here is a refusal to abide by the law and a consistent overtaxing of the community of funds that they know they don't need. So I'm just going to go through this controller's response line by line, not line by line, but a couple of points here. All right. First of all, he says they say that the district was ordered as part of a routine process. Well, that may be true, but whatever may be true. But what they left out was basically this was initiated by me and a number of other residents who complained to the controller about this budgeting practice, and the district's refusal to change no matter how many times I raised the issue, as well as the board's inability to go against the district and ask the proper questions as to why these numbers keep coming up year after year. So that's kind of a mischaracterization, and it just shows you that they won't even concede that much to me, and they won't even concede that this basically vindicates everything I've been saying for the past 2.5 years. So we go on to the next statement I take a little issue with, and that is basically that the audit did not find any instances of illegal activity. Really? Well, when you don't comply with a law, that means you're violating it. And if you're violating the law, well, that's illegal. So again, this is another example of how they're downplaying what's going on here. And the fact that the district is audited twice by internal and external auditors is meaningless because they don't really look at the district's budgeting practice. They're looking to make sure that all the numbers add up and there's no theft and there's accountability for any discrepancies. And I'm not going to get into the fuel inventory issue because it's been corrected, it's been nominal. But that also was something that I had brought to the controller's attention because I had raised the issue early on when I came to this district, that there was no automated means of dispensing gasoline. It was basically on a write a ticket and trust that everybody's being honest. But as you know, sometimes people aren't honest, and for whatever reason, that's been addressed. Now, this next statement I kind of have to chuckle at because it says through long-term planning and vision, the district has maintained fiscal and academic stability through difficult economic times. Well, how could they not have fiscal stability when they're running millions of dollars of extra money every year? They are not pinching pennies here. If you look at these numbers and you add in not only the amounts that they're maxed out on the reserves, which is about $7 million, which is the amount they're allowed to have by law, they're running probably double that on average over the past 5 years. So they have millions and millions of dollars that they know more than they know they need. And again, the problem is it wasn't never corrected, that it keeps being perpetuated year after year. And it's not fair to the taxpayers, and it's also not really reflecting the district's financial condition because it allows them to to advertise that the levy and the increases are much lower than they really are. Because last year, the budget was increased by $2 million, the budget coming up now for 15-16, 16-17, 15-16, sorry. They increased the budget by $1.9 million, and they're bragging about how it's basically less than 1% of an increase. But that 0.95% doesn't include the $8 million they rolled over to help support those taxes. So it was $10 million increase. And if you do the math, that increase is more like 5% tax levy, not 1%. Because if $2 million is 1%, $8 million is 4%, to be exact. So, they do this every year, so this is the game they play. So by not including those surpluses that they roll into the budget every year, into the tax levy calculation, they're not giving you an accurate picture of how much the increases really are. Now, not to beat a dead horse here, but the fact that they're bragging that these surplus is a result of diligent cost-saving measures is rather comical, to be honest with you. I mean, how do you save $8 million a year through cost-saving measures? What measures did they take to save $8 million a year? Not only that, but if you look at the controller's report, you'll see that the majority of the funds that were overestimated occurred in the categories of employee benefits, special education costs, and those are categories where there is not discretionary spending. Those are costs that they're using or they're calculating to say they think they're going to spend because of either it's a mandated cost or it's anticipated mandated cost. So they couldn't possibly have saved money in those categories because they couldn't have saved it. They thought they were going to spend the money, or they knew they weren't going to spend the money and decided just to beef it up a little bit so they'd have extra money to move around at the end of the year. The next kind of farce is this propagation of this theme that somehow they strive not to spend every penny of the budget, and that's why they're really spending 96% because they're really working hard for us, But the reason they're not spending 100% of the budget is because they know they didn't need 100% of the budget. They only needed 96%, and had they actually prepared a budget that went by the actual expenses, they would spend 100% or 99% of the budget. But they don't do that, and then they turn around and they use that as an explanation as to why they should be patted on the back. Again, it makes no sense when you really stop to look at these numbers. And again, the problem is that it's a repeated practice. Again, it's going on for over 5 years now. And just to give you an example real quick, like I said before, in 2015-16, it was basically a $10 million swing from actual expenditures to the next budget. We went from $175 million to $185 million. And in 2014-15, we actually had a $12 million swing, $12.1 million, because it went from $171.1 million to $183.2. And the prior years, I'm not going to get into all these numbers, but the prior years it was exactly the same thing. So if you use those numbers and you start doing the calculations, you'll see that the tax levy and the budget-to-budget increases, if you add in those surplus monies that they're not including in those calculations, are double, sometimes even more. And it's misleading, I think, to the taxpayers because they're making believe that they're doing this great job and making believe that all the money that they're asking you for is being used or is expected to be used, when that's plainly not the case. And a prime example would be, like I said, the budget increase of 1.03% for 15-16 was really 5.77% when you add in the surplus money that they use toward the taxes. So at the end of the day, what's going on here is that the district is getting effectively an interest-free loan from the taxpayers year after year. Now, some people may have a problem with that, but I do, because I have neighbors, I have friends, and even myself, I don't want to have to pay any more taxes than I have to. So each year, when you think about it, the residents of this district are deprived of the use of that money, regardless of the fact that they may roll it over to the following year, because maybe I wanted to spend it that year. Maybe I want to buy my kids books. Maybe I want to go to a movie. Whatever it is, and it's hundreds of dollars, not $10. It's $400 or $500 probably a person. And what about the people who moved? They don't get that money back the next year. They get no benefit from it. The people who buy their house may get it, but then they're paying for the next guy when they move. So the district is unnecessarily depriving people of their hard-earned money, and they're doing that by false pretenses, in my book. I mean, because they're padding the budget here. This is cooking the books. This is corporate America. You know, people here might be indicted.
Excuse me, now you're doing personal slander.
That's not slander.
Please refrain from personal slander saying
Not
that.
slander unless it's
Mr. Tampolini, I'm board chair. Please refrain from personal slander. Thank you. You may continue. Do you have anything else to add, Mr.
Yeah, I
Tampolini?
do. I'm looking at my notes 1 second. Yeah. Okay, so then we get back to the fact that, you know, somehow we're going to be in economic peril in this district if we don't do this. This is what their defense here apparently is. But it ignores the fact that we have $7 million in our contingency fund, which is what that's for. That's for unexpected expenses that come up during the year, shortfalls that we may incur. And it also overlooks the fact that when you start running out of money and you can't tax people anymore, it makes you become more efficient. So maybe we can't afford some of these high salaries that we have for secretaries, etc. Maybe we don't pay our community organizers $105,000 a year. Maybe we learn to tighten the belt like everybody does in their house when they start running out of money. And they say that because they want to scare everybody. They're going to lose programs and they're going to lose things to their children. So they use that as a scare tactic, basically. And there's plenty of ways that we could be more efficient here, for sure. I mean, and not to get into too much detail on what my personal views are, but you know, we spend a lot of money on the IB program. It benefits a small percentage of children in this district. Certainly could use that money towards something more productive, perhaps. And as far as talking about next year, well, you know, most of this budget is contractual. They know exactly what their expenses are going to be for the most part. Sure, there are some unions that we haven't settled with or haven't resolved our contract with. But notwithstanding that, for the most part, this is all money that they know they're going to spend. I mean, 75% is contractual. There's really 20-25% of the school budget is discretionary spending. So for them to claim that somehow they're missing by millions and millions of dollars every year, they're doing a real good, they're doing their best effort to make accurate predictions, just doesn't hold up under scrutiny. So, swinging full circle back around, I mean, nowhere in this controller's report is there any word, is the word philosophy. There's no dispute here with the controller over the district's philosophy. The dispute is over their budgeting practices and whether those budgeting practices comply with the law. And they plainly don't. The controller has found that no matter what the district may try to say. And the district's remarks that this is somehow some similar attempt to circumvent local control over the schools Well, that's, again, doesn't really make sense, because all the district controller is doing is trying to say, he's telling the district, you've got to comply with the law. And these comparisons to some of these other districts where this language wasn't used, if you look at those comparisons, they basically cherry-picked two districts, much smaller than our districts, with budgets of, I think, $38 and $58 million. And the fact that they didn't comment on the fact that they had surpluses, the surpluses were minuscule compared to our budgets and the amount of money that we're running over. So, at the end of the day, this really comes down to whether or not the district has been honest and forthcoming with the residents here. And I don't see how anybody can conclude that they have. And it's not, like I said before, innocent oversight. This is something that's going on for a long time. So. This district and the board has a fiduciary duty to the residents of this town. They have the duty to make sure that they get, the district provides the education for the children, and they have the duty to make sure that they don't overburden the taxpayers with taxes that are not really necessary. And I think here, the district and the board, both prior and former members, have all violated that duty. And the extent of this, to me, is it's just inexcusable. This was not something that they didn't know about. I was raising my arms before I was on that side of the microphone, and I've been doing it since I've been on this side of the microphone, as well as so many other people have. The fact that they've refused to recognize what I said, is fair enough to say, well, look, you knew what you should have known, but now they're going to kind of question now the controller's office and say, well, maybe they got it wrong. Well, they're the oversight committee of this for the state. That's what they do. And if they say, we're doing it wrong, then unless you really have hard evidence that they've made a mistake somehow, then you have to abide by what they're saying and make the corrective action.
Are you done, Mr. Campolini?
No, I don't think this.
Let it be known that the way I'm going to conduct myself is that after you're done with your commentary, I will let other board members make their own commentary.
Sure.
After that commentary, there's no rebuttal to their commentary as written by the rules of the chair, and then I will open up for public comment.
That's fine. So, just to make it, sum it up, I think in my view here that we're not really setting a good example here by deciding, what laws we want to comply with and what laws we don't want to comply with. That's not something that we should be teaching our children, and we shouldn't have a superintendent in charge of this district that is taking that position. Now, Mr. Wanshed asked me back last year if the controller came out with his report and proved me wrong, whether I would resign, and I told him I would. But what happens now? Does the same hold true for the other board members and superintendent now that I've been proven right? Well, I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander here. I mean, they, in my view, I have no confidence in them. I have no confidence in the superintendent. And as a result, there has to be consequences for this, and the only consequence for me, because they've betrayed the public trust, is for them to resign. And so I am hereby make a motion for the resignation of Dr. James, Assistant Superintendent Laura Newman, Trustee Jared Behar, Trustee Janine DiGirolamo, Board President Steve Hartman, and Vice President Janine DiGirolamo. Do I get a second?
I do. Sorry, no public participation at this time. Motion is not carried. Motion is denied.
Shocking.
Okay. We've indulged you with your time. There was about 20 minutes of indulging you with repetition. I hope you do feel a little bit better going through your rant. I'm going to open up to a variety of board members who want to comment. I have certainly a lot of comments. Certainly, I do apologize to the audience for you being called idiots. You're not idiots. I do appreciate your participation because he directly did inform me of calling you idiots. In addition, I will not entertain a motion for the resignation of other board members, as Mr. Winstead. That's extremely unprofessional of what was done. What was done and even asked for is extreme. What he done was libelous in many circumstances of his discussion points. Certainly, I can go on and counterpoint all of his points, but I will let the other 3 board members speak at this time.
I have a question for Mr. Timpling. When you were stating years that you said you started seeing this pattern, when was it that it first started? Around 2011, you said?
Somewhere around there, yeah. Was it 12 right now?
So basically after your boys graduated, that's when you started having a problem with the budgeting practices?
That's a correct statement.
Okay.
Yeah,
Also, I had a question for
I
Mr.
can't do anything.
Have you seen the report?
It's calm.
Was there anything?
No commentary, Mr. Tampolini. We did honor you with the presence. No commentary at this time. Thank you.
Don't
Was
fix
there
your
any
remarks. You want me
statement
to
in
Mr. Tampolini, I'm calling to order.
Okay.
Please, no comments at this time. We indulged you for your 20 minutes. I didn't interrupt you. Certainly, as the board president, I could have stopped you at any given time. I was indulgent to you. I was very sympathetic to listening to what you had to say, to express what you had to say to the people here in the audience. At this time, please let Mrs. DiGiolamo speak uninterrupted. Thank you.
Mr. Banowski, you've seen the report from the Controller's Office. Is there any place in there that they actually cite us breaking a law?
I think the controller's report speaks for itself. I will point out that on page 2 in the executive summary under audit results, the controller states, the board and district officials need to improve oversight of the district's budget process to adequately manage the district's financial condition. From 2011/12 through 13-14, the district reported year-end unrestricted fund balance at levels that essentially complied with the 4% fund balance limitation. And in the footnote then, the controller refers to the real property tax law, which is the 4% rule.
Thank you. I just want to read a brief little statement that I put together today. As school board members, we are responsible for maintaining the educational quality of our district. It's our job to collectively determine the policies that govern the operation of our local public school system. Each of us brings our individual experience and the voice of our stakeholders to the table when making decisions that will affect our Commack students and the integrity of our brand of Commack education. I believe in a system that allows local officials, based on community input, to determine the best course of action and appropriate practices for their individual districts. However, within the past few years, we have experienced an attack by the state government on Long Island, including an attempt to strip local officials, taxpayers, and parents of their rights to decide what is best for their districts and children. Recently, I attended a rally held at Rolling Hills Primary School, hosted by the Executive Director of Parents for Megan's Law and legislator Steve Stern, to call on state representatives in Albany to, quote, restore the ability of local lawmakers to protect our children from sex offenders. Another dangerous example of the state trampling on local government. They have attacked our teachers, they have attacked our children, and now they are attacking our budget practices. But it is because of our budgeting practices that we have been able to maintain our educational standards. While other districts using the budgeting practices suggested in this particular report by the Controller's Office and Mr. Tampolini struggle with devastating program and faculty cuts. Therefore, I am confident, based on the input of my fellow community members, the passing of the 2015-16 budget by 77%, and the ever-expanding educational opportunities available to our students, that we are on the right course for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiGiolamo. Does anyone else have any other things they'd like to add at this time?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and then I have a statement.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a question for Mrs. Newman. How often are districts usually audited by the Controller's Office?
It's usually been running between 5 and 7 years.
And before we were audited just now, how long had it been since Commack had been audited?
They had first come in 2006, and then there was a brief follow-up to that.
So it would have been about 9 years since we'd been a full audit on a cycle that's usually 5 to 7 years?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to double check that. And then the internal and external audits, is part of the purpose of those audits to make sure we're complying with the real property law?
Yes, as a matter of fact, on the external audit, there is a portion, a statement within the financial statements that is opined on by the auditors in totality, but that specific statement shows that we are compliant with real property tax 1318.
Okay, so you would characterize that as meaningless as to whether or not we are compliant with the law, is that correct?
I would estimate that to state that we are compliant with the law.
Mr. Stampolini, I have a couple of questions. I took a lot of notes about what you said, and I just want to make sure I understand what your position is. I noted you called for my resignation. I wasn't actually on the board when any of these budgets were passed, but I just, this being my first pass-through this process, I just want to make sure I understand. When you're saying that the board or the district is pulling the wool over the residents' eyes because they're doing this in a fraudulent or in a manner through misstatements, how do you reconcile that with the fact that you also said that this is something that we should have known because you've brought it up at meeting after meeting and we talk about it during the budget workshop? So if this is a point that's discussed at every budget meeting and is brought up through the process and then the voters vote on it, how is that done in a process that is then misleading the voters?
Well, that's an easy question. If 15 people come to the meetings, or 15 people know. So unless they tell a neighbor, and then a neighbor tells another neighbor, no, the word don't get out. And they're not scrutinizing these numbers. When you tell them the tax levy is 1%, they don't look in and say, well, how did you get to that number? They're basically going by the dog and pony show that you do every year on that screen, and they don't have the time or the inclination to want to delve into the facts. But once you do, you can see exactly what I've seen and exactly what the controllers found, is that these numbers are way past what they should be.
Okay. So it's just that the residents of Commack aren't paying attention or listening to you? That's why we're doing that? So it's not that we're not giving them the information.
Giving them the
Just
wrong
so I
information.
understand.
Mr. Fusco, please do not interrupt. This is discussion. Public participation is at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. It's not that the district is not giving the citizens the information. If I understood you correctly, we are. It's just that the citizens aren't paying attention to it.
No.
I mean,
That's not what I said. I said you're not giving them all the information. You're giving them part of the information.
Okay.
So when you say, like I said before, that the tax levy or the budget increase was 1.05%, you're not including in that 1.05% the $8 million that you rolled over and applied to the taxes to get that number. Because had you done that, the number would be closer to 6%.
Mrs. Newman, at the budget workshop presentations, when you put the slides up on the board, do you show the appropriated fund balance and explain that that's the money that was unspent that's then being applied to the next year's budget?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so what specific information is not being given to the taxpayers, Mr. Tampa?
Do you believe that the people of this district really know what an appropriated fund balance is?
So, again, are you calling them idiots?
I'm not calling anybody. I didn't call them idiots before either. I said you think they're idiots. So don't mischaracterize what I
Excuse
said.
me, Mr. Fusco. At this point, I'm going to ask you to leave if you continue. Thank you.
Back here talking also.
Mrs. Newman, at the budget workshop meetings, is it explained what the appropriated fund balance is?
It is explained. It is posted on our website as well.
Okay, so, and I've been in the audience and I understood what the appropriated fund balance is.
Apparently
So-
not.
Okay.
Well, you said there was no surplus. I recall. You said it was a fallacy. I think that was your quote. The controller don't think it was a fallacy. And then you wrote all those silly articles about how I was wrong and now I'm right. You're going to write an apology next? When am I going to see that? Put it on your wife's blog? Or you're going to boo people off for bad enough?
Excuse me, please do not do any personal attacks against someone else, another board member's that was not even on the board. That's very disrespectful. Please continue, Mr. Behar.
Steve, it's fine. That's the best you can do.
But
I got
I don't
more.
appreciate, it's part of the Robert Rules of Order. We do not do personal attacks on any participating member, especially someone who's in the audience.
The comptroller found that we had an operational deficit though last year, isn't that correct?
Not an operating deficit, they're two different things between a budget surplus and an operating deficit.
No, I agree, and I
Okay.
agree that I'm saying that the comptroller found that we ran an operating deficit last year, did he not?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. I'm just trying to get my head around what you're saying.
It's not that difficult.
Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever met with Mrs. Newman to talk over the specific ways in which the district saves money every year?
Nope.
You have?
Nope.
You have not?
No.
All right, I just wanted to double check on that one. Now, let me ask you this. I guess this is the last, because I don't want to go on with this all night.
Thank you.
You put up a motion asking for everyone to resign. Is it my understanding that it's your position that every person in the administration and that sits on the board who is responsible for setting the tax levy at a rate, at a rate higher than it should have been, should resign? Is that your position?
Not everybody, just as 1, 2, the 6 people that are up here.
Why not everybody?
Well, because you can't fire the whole district.
Okay.
But the people at the top who are in charge of formulating these budgets and the board members who have approved it, there's no reason why they can't bear responsibility for these actions.
So the board members that approved the tax levy, that it was a rate higher than it should be, should resign. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
The board members that approved the tax levy higher than it should be.
It's not so much that they approved it, it should have been, but that they misled the district, the residents as to the financial condition and the fact that they permitted these these surpluses to continue year after year without doing anything in their power to stem it.
I'd like to hear the answer to Mr. Behar's question.
Part of
It's a
that
yes
is
or no.
approving the tax levy, correct?
Well, of course, at the end of the day, if they approve the tax levy and they know that it's inflated, yeah, then they're violating their oath.
The interesting thing about that, the board actually takes 2 votes on setting the tax levy. One is to accept the budget as presented by the administration. Then the voters go out and they vote in favor of it. After that, however, the board still has to vote to then actually set the tax levy. And the board could theoretically say, oh, well, you know, I don't care what the voters said, I'm going to put the tax levy at a lower rate because, for example, I think they're inflating the budget. That's usually done at the October meeting. I went back and I looked. In October of 2014, the motion to set the tax levy, motion made by Mr. Hartman, seconded by Mrs. DiGirolamo, and carried unanimously to adopt the tax levy for the 2014-2015 year. This one I found more interesting. October 24th, 2013. Motion made by Mr. Wunsch, seconded by Mr. Tampolini, and carried unanimously to adopt the 2013-2014 tax levy as approved by the voters. So I guess I'm curious as to why you're taking this position when you, both times that you had the opportunity, voted in favor of setting the tax levy at the rate that was suggested by the administration.
You can't change the tax levy once it's voted on and approved by the voters. There's no change, there's no lowering it.
You can actually vote no. So in your inference,
Oh, here we go.
so in your inference,
Gang up on Jim Day. Okay,
so now you're trying to play the victim as you criticize the
I'm not the victim, everybody in this community is the victim.
In fact, again, we did lower the tax levy against, in the first year. It actually was lowered. We did take some of the fund balance and did lower the tax levy the first year. The second year, we ran an operating deficit, so you cannot lower the tax levy any lower. So, Mr. Tampolini, by your own inference, you should be in the same boat as the rest of us. Thank you.
If you say so.
I do say so. Thank you.
That's just what the facts are, and I think in my mind, it's either you're being inconsistent, which is the problem that we're having, or you're not paying attention, which is scarier. So I'm not sure which one of those is, but it really can only be one of the two.
The only thing scary is that you're a lawyer.
Personal attacks are again not appreciated, Mr. Tampolini. Thank you.
Keep telling me that.
I will keep telling you that.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome, Mr. Tampolini.
I've often found that personal attacks are used when substance is lacking, so I will accept that.
Okay. It's my right of
Statement I want to make, and then I'm done.
Okay, go right ahead, Mr.
I will not be an unwilling soldier in the state's attack on public education, and I will certainly not make the majority of our community unwilling pawns. The game that the Comptroller's office is playing is clear from looking at the last 2 reports that he has issued concerning our district. When the comptroller wanted to raise our fiscal stress number, he said that our reserves are too low, and he calculated them, correctly as I believe, without adding in the appropriated fund balance. Now, when the comptroller wants to claim that our reserves are too high, he's counting the appropriated fund balance, despite the fact that it is inconsistent with his prior reports, his prior guidance, and his fiscal stress calculations. Well, he can't have it both ways, and our children are too precious to get caught in the middle of a political game. The disingenuous nature of the comptroller's audit is evident on its face. Every year, the district is upfront about the appropriated fund balance, its amount, and then it is given back to the taxpayers every year as the foundation of the next year's budget. It is literally discussed and shown on slides at every budget presentation. Claiming that this practice has deceived anyone is a bald-faced lie. Adding up 3 years of money that has been given back every year to make it look bigger is nothing more than propaganda, and suggesting that the money wasn't given back to the taxpayers because it is given back in the next year is just false. The district's budgeting practices have led to an unprecedented increase in programs, extracurricular activities, and student-to-teacher ratios, coupled with historically low tax increases. And significantly, the district has the resources to survive the next recession with little to no interruption of services. The next recession is a when, it's not an if, and we are prepared for it. The alternative is, again, because the money is given back every year, a one-time tax reduction somewhere in the range of about $200 for the average household. I strongly believe that the majority of this community cares about our children and our quality of their education, and will not trade the district's ability to manage its future and the next recession for a one-time $200 savings or to go to a movie. If we are really laying our cards on the table, some people will want to take that one-time tax savings, and they don't care that the result will be at some point programs will have to be cut for our children. I believe that the majority of these people do not or no longer have children in this district. It is certainly their right to take that position, but I do not believe that it is the will of the majority of the community and the 70% plus that have voted in favor of the budget the last 2 years with full knowledge of the district's budgeting practices. In sum, I support the district's budgeting practices because I think the long-term planning that the district has put in place is right for our community and most importantly our children. The benefit of changing this practice is far outweighed by its dire cost, and I believe that the overwhelming majority of our community members feel the same way. Thank you.
Mrs. Messiello, do you have anything to add at this time?
Listened to, of course, every word tonight. I've listened to many another night where this sense of demonization of the board, demonization of other entities to bring a lack of trust towards us from the community, and it's very disheartening. I would like to make it clear that as a board and as a team working with our superintendent, we take very seriously all and any of that which is coming to us from the state, whether it be about our academics, whether it be about our dollars spent. We do not disregard, we do not circumvent, and at this point, we will take seriously what has been brought to our attention. But just as in other cases, APPR, Common Core, we also believe we know what we are doing for our students to give them the best education that they possibly can get. I moved here with my well, there weren't 4, but as I was here, 4 children, because I knew and believed in Commack. And I will stay here, I will not leave. And I see now some of the children of my oldest son's friends are now entering the schools because those students come back because they too know the education that they got here. And I remember way back in my 18 years, as my children were no longer in the district, or maybe Noreen was, still saying my focus, my #1 focus was to fulfill the promise that the children of Commack will continue to have the quality education that my children had. We have not only accomplished that, but in the midst of all the economic crises, we have accomplished that much more. One of the reasons is we have hired the best. We have the greatest teachers that I can see in all that I compare others going. Some of our children cannot get jobs here, they go elsewhere. There's a lot of ways to understand just how terrific our teachers are, our administrators are, and all that we've done. So rather than go item by item through all the differences of philosophy we have about budgeting, this district never has strayed from the law. We've spent time making sure of that, and we will not now. But I know we will advocate, just as we did for APPR, just as we did for our Common Core students that are taking way too many tests. We will advocate to see how we can clear up the mess that was made and the smudge on our name that I do not believe is appropriately placed. But more importantly than that, I've sat up here for 18 years, and we've had a lot more angst and anger and resentment among board members, but it was never a public display of nonsense the way we have come to be here. We will all, I hope, rededicate to being the board that can operate with civility and courtesy and not throw names, throw nonsense around to make ourselves look like many a district that I've been trying to avoid participating in their problems for years. Please, let's take it seriously, as I know our superintendent does. We have never duped the public. We have done everything we can to let them know that yes, we are thinking forward. We do not want to be caught up. I do not like when children come up and cry because we have to take away something. That breaks my heart. I know what we can be, and now that we have more and more and more of our students entering the IB program, it isn't an elitist group. It is an opportunity that so many more are taking part in, that it's a phenomenon. It's great. And therefore, all I can say and ask is let us please rededicate. Let's not ask for resignations. Let's not throw stones. Let's show our community that we believe in what we're doing for kids, because it's all good. I'm sorry, it's all good.
Thank you, Mrs. Masiello. Dr. James, you have anything else to say at this time?
At this time, we certainly have taken notes on some of the issues that were brought forward. If it's appropriate, we will bring back additional information. Otherwise, I believe that most questions have been asked and answered.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just want to make a few clarifications. Just, I did take some notes, and Mr. Behar did. I don't need any answers to the questions. I'm just a little bit concerned, Mr. Tampolini's tone and tenor that he took during this meeting. It's kind of disturbing because he's actually insulting you as the audience, insulting the people. People come to these meetings because they have a concern, they have an interest to it. People aren't here for a reason. The district is operating at a top efficiency, as you can clearly see. I was clearly very concerned with two main facts I want to bring to people: disassemble the IB program and cut teaching staff and administration, destroying the core of the Commack Foundation. We pay taxes for having the best here. To dismantle for $200 to $300, or now I hit $400 to $500, the number got inflated, is really disconcerting. I moved here for the schools, my neighbors have moved here for the schools, people stay here because it's a great district to live in. To be very short-sighted for $200 to $300 for a one-time shot and to start down a road down to destruction is not what I'm in for. So I want to be clear about that is very disconcerting to me as a board member to go anywhere in that direction. And the last thing I want to ask you is this. I've sat down and I'll wait my final comments to the end, but to what end do you think that particular board members are sitting up here pulling wool over people's eyes and basically trying to deceive you? I'm a taxpayer just like the rest of you out there. I have children here, my neighbors have children. I can't even imagine the reason why, or any reasons why, the school district or anyone up here would do something to someone in the district. It's unfathomable and unconscionable that someone would out here and actually do that. It doesn't make any sense. Where the controller says it, there's no law broken. Basically, he doesn't say that you have broken this law. In fact, we have an audit report right here in our hands that shows that we comply. So basically, we're saying that every auditor out there is incorrect in doing what they're doing. Everyone out there is basically doing something wrong. So basically, our internal auditors are wrong, externals are wrong, and there's no law being broken. So I just want to leave at that point for the people here in the community. It's very, with that point. At this point, I'm going to open up for public commentary. And I also like to say that this is not a question and answer session. We'll be taking notes. If the administration has the ability to answer the question at the time, they will have the team to answer it. If not, it will be answered at a subsequent meeting in the future. And we try to please keep your answers, succinct. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Bruce Ettenberg. No, it's not on. It's just Bruce Ettenberg, 12 Finecombe Lane. I just had two comments. One is, I hope that the board will take seriously the comments of the controller, whether or not you believe it's a philosophical difference or a breach of fiduciary duty. I certainly hope either way you will take it seriously. And the second comment is, a couple of years ago, I had occasions where students came to the Commack Community Association to ask that we contribute because their club had been cut, because we were having cuts. And I'm just wondering if at that time, when the clubs were cut, there was this huge surplus in the budget. And that's my comments. I hope that the students' clubs weren't cut while you were sitting with millions of dollars in surplus in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edberg. I'm glad you're answering for the board. Thank you, Mr. Tampolini.
I'm saying the truth.
You can say what you say is the truth. Thank you, Mr. Tampolini.
Good evening, Peter Wunsch, former chairman of the PTA Budget Committee. I've got a question, a comment, a clarification to a misstatement, and then another question if I can quickly. The question is, the meeting earlier with the audit committee was over this report, correct?
Correct.
When was the scope of the audit committee changed? I thought the scope of the audit committee was only to meet on the internal and external audits.
There's a response from the controller's orders for us to get the audit committee involved.
Okay, because maybe more other people might have applied to be on that committee if they knew there was a different scope. That's all.
I think
And maybe you should change the charter or the bylaws or whatever the heck.
The audit committee is reinstated every 2 years, so
Well, but it's not just, yeah, but I'm talking about,
okay, thank you.
okay. My comment, first I want to state that Mr. DiNapoli, years ago, at that time, was the youngest elected school board member in New York State. So I am really disappointed in this report. As you know, I am quite accounting geeky and spend every Saturday reading every one of Commissioner DiNapoli's press releases. And DiNapoli learned at the foot of Senator Chuck Schumer in that you issue press releases and hold ridiculous news conferences on slow news weekends. You don't have to comment, that's exactly what he did. I've gone through, and as being on the BOCES board, and I'm not speaking for BOCES, just being on the BOCES board, I've looked at the reports of the neighboring district. Northport did something similar to what this district did. The only criticism he had of them was they set up reserves that they should not have set up. They were not illegal. Elwood was criticized because they didn't have reserves. The man speaks with a forked tongue, the man being DiNapoli. If he really had a strong opinion, he would have said, your reserves shouldn't be 8 million, you're over budget, whatever you want to call it. It should be 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. Not one person, him or anyone who has ever come up to this mic, has come up with a number. Come up with a number. What should it be? Now, for my clarification, and I'm going to address this to you, Mr. Hartman, because you can't address individual board members.
That's correct.
A statement was made referring to me. The correct discussion on the board at the time was, would I resign if the budgeting practice was illegal? My comment at the time was, yes. Would the person who asked the question resign if it was legal? Well, this proves it's legal, so my question for the board is, will the board member who raised that question resign? Not liking something doesn't make it illegal. My wife does not like the fact that I am now playing golf 4 and 5 days a week. Neither does the superintendent last time I mentioned it to him. That's besides the point. It's still not illegal. So I hope I can get that answer next month.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Orange.
Linda?
All right, Jim touched on a lot of the same points that I saw in the response about this being a routine audit. There was no routine audit, people. This was the controller's office responding to complaints from people in the community, which were confirmed that they were overestimating the budgets. I don't know where you got the $200 figure. You know, obviously you want to minimize the impact on everybody, but last year when you guys raised the budget, I think you needed $2 million. My taxes went up for that $2 million, $300 just for the school tax portion, $500 in total with the police and everybody else. So if you have $8 million or $9 million in overestimated or underexpended budget, do the math, my friend. It's $300 times 3.5. That would be over $1,000 that you took out of my pocket, my friend.
Just a point of clarification, the $200 to $300 actually came from a posting on your Facebook site, so thank you.
Excuse me?
Continue.
Excuse me?
The commentary I'm adding is the $200 to $300 came from a commentary that you had made on a Facebook post website. You may continue.
That's $200, $300 per year. So multiplied by the 3 years of the report.
You can continue your math, please go right ahead. I just wanted to add a clarification to it. Go ahead.
He touched on the point about it being, you guys calling it a cost savings. Listen, if I need a dollar to buy a bottle of water, and you tell me that you need $1 million to buy that bottle of water, you didn't save me $999,000 by spending the $1 for that bottle of water. That's what you're trying to pull over the eyes of the people of the community. Also, last year, we realized $9 million in unexpended budgets, in the unexpended part of the budget. That was actually $12 million before you guys went on some spending spree in June. If you look at your numbers for June, you were on track to $12 million based on your projections of what you were going to spend through the end of June. And all of a sudden, one of the things I'll give you credit for was you paid down a bond about $1.5 million. But there was another $1.5 million that you guys just blew through for BOE services. Look at your BOE services numbers. So the actual number was about $12 million last year, but did a good job of spending it in June to knock that number down to $9 million. One of the points this guy here made was why do people fall for this during the budget season? Well, if you give everybody false information, of course they're going to fall for it. If you tell me you need $10 million of pencils for my kid, I'm going to give you $10 million of pencils. But when you only need $100 for pencils, is that realistic? Is that being honest and transparent with the community? So there's your answer on why people fall for it. You keep saying you could have raised taxes more, you get on this to meet the limit. Well, why would you go to 4% if you already have $9 million left over that you didn't spend? And so you basically got an extra 2% when you could have went to 6% or whatever the numbers you were saying. You keep repeating over and over that you give the money back, give the money back. Obviously, you did not read the audit report from the controller's office because he specifically states in here that you did not give the money back to us, okay? Over 3 years, the cumulative amount was $24 million, and of the $24 million, you gave back $1.8 million. It's in the controller's report. I got to assume that the people that came here and went through the books are fairly smart people that do this every day for a living. So you gave back $600,000 per year compared to the overestimated expenses of $8 million a year. So you didn't give us back the money, but I'm willing to come pick up a check tomorrow. If you want to give me back my money, I'll take it.
have anything at this time, Mr. Fusco?
Yeah, well, one of the important things is you guys just have no credibility because during the budget process, you feed us with false information. So how are we supposed to believe anything you say? If you told us the lights were on in here tonight, why should we believe you? You give us paperwork and show us slides. We need this for the kids, we need this for the kids. And at the end of the day, the numbers are fudged. So why do you have any credibility whatsoever? And one of the things I resent is that you keep using our children as shields. You perpetrate a scheme, which in my mind, this is a Ponzi scheme, all right? You keep collecting money, you're telling me you're giving it back. That's basically what Bernie Madoff did. He collected everybody's money, said, I'm giving it back to you. Here it is on your statement. You got it back. This is a quasi-Ponzi scheme that you guys are running here. And you keep using our children as shields. You keep saying how the education is great. We don't want to cut teachers. We don't want to cut this. You have so much money in this district through these schemes that there's no way you would have to ever cut anything. All right, so you got my blood pressure up, and I'll leave the mic to the next person.
I think, Mr. Fusco, you got your own blood pressure up, so thank you for your
And the last
commentary.
thing I'll mention is two things. From the audit committee meeting, you keep going this 0% budgeting. It's just some sort of fallacy. You know exactly from day one where you're going, from 0 all the way up to 170 million, right from like Jump Street, because you know what you spent last year. So unless you're going to not spend the 170 million from last year, you can't start at 0. You got to start at the 170 million. The other thing I found scary at that meeting was you guys can't even manage a gasoline system with an antiquated ticket system. Write a ticket, you get it on a spreadsheet. That's scary that you guys are actually managing $185 million and you can't even manage gasoline tickets. That's it for me tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco.
I just want to make one point of clarification. Comptroller actually says nearly $24 million of appropriated fund balance was used to finance operations. Comptroller says $24 million was returned to taxpayers.
Mr. Fusco, at this time, I'm letting someone else come to the microphone. Thank you very much. I also like to add that, we appreciate all your feedback, Mr. Fusco. I hope that you'll be giving us some more information at the budget information meeting and giving us some feedback, because as you know, we present all these slides. The slides are on the website. We go through some great detail. You can actually sit down. I applaud you probably for speaking to Mrs. Newman and trying to get some of the numbers, but what we actually want is that we can sit there and debate about what your definition of Ponzi schemes and fudging numbers. I don't see anything credible in here. This is just my opinion. We have a debate at another period of time, specifically during the budget meeting. But we do appreciate your feedback at this time. So I'm going to let Mrs. Verity come to the mic at this time.
First, I want to address him. He uses the pronoun we. I would prefer that you said I, because you don't speak for me. And you don't speak for many of the people.
And you don't speak for me either. So don't use the pronoun we when you talk,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you, Ms. Verity. We continue.
You want to shout? I was in the audit meeting, and a lot of things were discussed, and Mr. Campolini didn't bring up any questions or objections there. Okay.
Correct.
I understand the challenging times that Commack schools are facing. I understand the outrage. Long Island has never received its fair share of money. We pay, and Albany never comes close to making us whole. Commack has been shorted millions of dollars over the past 5 years and is still expected to thrive under the heavy burden of unfunded mandates and the significant costs incurred by Common Core and its associated tax. On top of all of this, we have the 2% tax cap. That makes it even more challenging to maintain the quality programs that are provided to our children. Despite these challenges, our board and our administrators are not only maintaining, but expanding the district's educational programs, such as adding more enrichment classes at all different levels and more college courses at the high school level. and we continue to stay under the 2% cap. As a taxpayer who has children in this district, I can honestly say our school district is not, our school board is not the problem. When we are losing out on millions of state tax dollars that are rightfully ours, this board has had a consistent track record of fighting to bring money home. I don't see how eliminating reserves will save money when we'll only need to pay a bigger, more daunting bill to maintain programs the following year. I can assure you that the state has many more unfunded mandates coming down the pike. We will be very grateful for those reserves. To deplete our reserves now in the midst of a corporate grab to privatize our public schools will only force us to pierce the tax cap the following years and force the district to increase class sizes, decrease programs, and lay off staff. Who loses? The children. And for what? To save a couple of bucks now, in the moment? Commack parents are way too smart for that. These politics divide and hurt our community at a time that we need to show a strong front. We must seek our better angels and join hands to force Albany to give our district its fair share of its state tax dollars, which are rightfully ours. We need to bring the strong voices in this room, all of the voices together, to address the regional challenges that we face. Public education is in jeopardy, and we are quibbling amongst ourselves. Let's first ensure that our schools will survive intact and continue to offer our community children a path to a successful future. Let's not allow those that would take from our community, essentially our children, let us not allow them to see the spaces that divide us. It is time to join hands for the sake of all of our children. I have children in this district, and I support this board, I support this administration, because they put our children first, and this is their first and foremost responsibility. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Mrs. Verity.
Good evening.
Good.
Teresa Burke.
Teresa,
Hi,
Ms.
everyone. I've got just a couple of, I'm going to go quick. The first thing, I guess, is my point would be, these controller reports, they're 5 to 7 years from what was stated, and then it's been a while since we've had the last one. Perhaps that's one of the problems why all of a sudden it's coming to the forefront now. If perhaps we were audited maybe 5 years ago, or at least in the last 7 years, we might not be where we're at as far as what I look at the numbers, and they're just briefly the numbers. If we have $6 million unused, but every year you'll see me up here at budget saying, why do we have to cut this? Why does people have to donate this? Why do we have 15 band uniforms for 300 kids? That's my issue. My issue isn't the process. My issue is that we have $6 million one year, 9.9 the second, 8.8 last year, and we're getting like 15 uniforms. I put it $1 to $1. If it's for the children, then it should be the children across the board. And I don't know if $8.8 million of unused funds could be cut a little bit so that we don't have to worry about cutting programs or enlarging class sizes. It's basically that. I don't care how you do your math, but all I know is I'd feel comfortable maybe with $5 million above the 4%. But 8.8, that $3 million could really go a long way for our children. Then the other point I had is, a lot of people didn't bring up the fuel. My key is this: someone's job either got taken away or reallocated because there wasn't a checks and balances in place. For one person to be responsible for however the system was prior, it's not that person's fault if nobody checked them. There's a checks and balances. So now we spent $12,000 to $15,000 on this automated system, and someone's been reassigned. I don't quite think that's fair. As an individual, that person is doing what they're doing, and if there's not somebody looking out for them, that's a point. That's something that's a checks and balances and should have been in place. And then again, the only other thing I want to mention is, from what I understand, the next 2 years we're going to show a surplus, similar to unused, about the balances that we're at. let's think about that when we go in March, and I'll be there again, and I'll be trying to get those programs in place and class sizes keeping small. But let's remember, we have an $8.8 million unused funds from last year carrying over, and I'm sure we're going to have a similar number for next year. But let's take that into consideration when we're really trying to keep the taxes down, but really fund it for the children, especially with we know what's coming up with the Common Core. That's it. Thank you.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Thank you. It's really hard to come up and speak on the heels of what Mr. Bihar said and what Mrs. Verity said, because what I have to say really echoes the wonderful job that they said. I just want to say personally, I'm a little insulted that we were all referred to as idiots. I believe that we are not, and we have better decision-making abilities. My husband is a CPA, he is a CFA, he is the CFO of a large company on Long Island, and his job is to put together budgets and stick to those budgets very well. And he does that very, very well. He penny pinches me at home all of the time. This summer we're doing a staycation. Things are going well, we're all healthy. Could we go away? Sure, we could go away. Is it financially responsible for us to go away when we know we could have upcoming expenses that we are not even thinking about today? Probably, we really need to make that decision to be careful about what we spend. And as Mr. Bihar said, there is an economic collapse coming, whether some people see it or don't, but it is on the horizon, and we do need to plan accordingly for those things that we don't really see. And it's very important to do that. So I believe that the philosophy of fiscal responsibility and long-term planning is paramount. It should be. And the district is doing a good job in taking account of that. And I believe that we are very cushioned for that economic collapse that's going to come. And in light of that, our children are not going to lose the things that they are accustomed to having in terms of all the services that they get, OCs, special ed. And there are so many things, support personnel, before school, during school, after school. Certain crises that come up after school at 5 o'clock, perhaps on school grounds, that a child that could be emotionally disturbed needs help that none of us even hear about. These are things that are going on day in and day out that need to be thought about in the future. So I really appreciate the district looking out for the future of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Anyone else have any questions at this time?
All right, so I found the paragraph that says, while only $1.8 million of the nearly $24 million of appropriated fund balance was used to finance operations, as a result, taxpayers have been paying more than necessary to fund district operations. I did read this thing, so I don't know why there's questions about it. District officials should not have appropriated fund balance or reserve funds simply to circumvent the statutory limit. Sound budgeting practices provide that adopted annual budgets do not routinely appropriate fund balances that will not actually be used to fund operations, instead of decreasing the fund balance as reflected in the budget presented to taxpayers. This practice increases the amount of fund balance. And it just keeps going on and on and on of all the things we've been saying for the last 3 years. And I don't think the lady that just spoke understands that this is above and beyond the $30 million or so that we have in reserve funds. We have $6 or $7 million that we can spend on pencils, chairs, carpet, teachers, whatever we want. And then we have the $25 million in restricted funds. So we have a lot of money to spend in reserves in this district for the coming financial doom.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. Anyone else have any public commentary at this time? Okay. So at this point, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to ask you one thing. through this whole thing, I think you're doing a great job up there most of the time.
Thank you.
Jim, thank you very much for always your great input. Enrollment has been going down in Commack. And you say like we have to pay, we're paying a lot for administration, but where is the end result? Every family, like you said, wants to spend $200 or $300. There are people that I speak to in Commack that don't want to spend that anymore. You know, it's worth, every teacher, administrator is worth what they get paid. They all are, they work very hard in Commack, there's no way about it. But where do we get to the point that we can't afford anymore to pay those prices anymore? You might love, like you said, that car, you just can't afford it anymore. And that's where I feel we're getting in Commack. I drive here, I must have seen 30 houses for sale, and I live behind the Mayfair Shopping Center. That's not a good sign. I've been here, like everybody said, I've been here 57 years. There was never a house in Commack 2 days it would be sold. There's over 300 houses now in Commack for sale. So, like Mary Jo said, some of the kids are coming back, maybe some of them aren't. Most of them aren't because they can't afford to live in Commack. So that has to be addressed. We're not saying, like Jim said, I don't think it's really necessary to pay $120,000 for a secretary. I really don't. If we don't always have that money, maybe we'll cut costs a little bit and be a little more careful with our money. That's all. And like I said, I sat here many times, and we told clubs for $1,000, we can't have a club for $1,000, and we got $8 million in the bank. I mean, that's like telling you can't have an ice cream, and you got a pocket full of money. I don't know how you can sleep at night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marchese. Anyone else have any commentary this time? So as my concluding remark, as the board president, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the board meeting tonight. I hope that it was exciting as the Republican debate, which is being aired right now. My remarks regarding the audit report issued by the Controller's Office are seen through many different angles. I'm an elected official, parent of children going through the school district, have friends and many children here as well. I take this job very seriously, and there's many aspects of being a board member, which include not only the financial aspects, which we seem to focus on, there's the community relations, as well as working with my fellow board members as we are part of one team. We don't act as individuals, we act as a team together. As an elected official over the past 2 years, I personally reviewed the detailed budget documents that are forwarded to all board members. This book here is a copy of the budget that's forwarded to all board members. Every board member gets it. A redacted copy of about 19 pages is on the website for everybody. It's clearly transparent of what we get in the numbers. People can disagree out there. The numbers are out. The numbers are out there, and it's very clear. Changes are made, and the budget is finalized with feedback of specific items from all members of the community. I personally view each of these codes as a board member, and there's no rubber stamping of this process. There are multitudes of opportunities for the board and the community to recommend proposed changes.
Thank you.
As a board member, I want to make sure that we continue to maintain a long-term fiscal stability and continue to provide and add additional programs for students, as well as in making sure, to one person's comment, there is a tax levy here in the state of New York. We must comply with that. That is the law that we're governed by. As part of the budget workshop research, I investigated and found the definitions of what the word appropriated fund balance means, and became aware of this memo, which was put forth by the Controller's Office. This memo discusses the government accounting issues for GASB statement number 54. I won't read the gory details of it because it's kind of long and laborious, but it's been in effect since June 30th of 2011. During our exit interview with the Controller's Office, we brought up this memo and how the appropriated fund balance can be used. We had a discussion and the words that were used in the initial draft report. Their awareness of this memo seemed to perplex them completely. They had no articulation of a response on the differences that can clearly be seen in this memo and the audit report. I also, during the initial interview, spoke to the Controller's Office and asked them personally what led them here to Commack. They said, you were due for an audit. Period. Simple as that. I also reacquainted myself and reviewed the audit reports as were done in our audit form and compared them to our internal audit report. The internal audit report has no subjective language as the language that you will see there. Words such as unrealistic, insignificant are not statements of fact. They're basically terms and adjectives that we can use to sell on a normal day that people can appreciate. Our audit report clearly states on page 5, for the past 4 years, which you can get from the website, the district has complied with the real property tax limit law for each year. Clearly, there are people that are motivated with outside interests should be providing factual information and adhere to policies as set forth. Dismantling of programs and administration is not something we should be doing. Last, as a review, I went to the controller's website and downloaded the last 12 order reports. I don't have, similar to what Mr. Wunschett mentioned, the districts that are out there have many disconcerting reports. Here are some highlights. The district does not have a multi-year financial plan, and the district continues to diminish services in order to improve their financial condition. The district is experiencing significant fiscal stress. They have no operating cash on hand, very little fund balance on hand at the time to manage any unforeseen events. This commentary is quite disconcerting in this audit reports and highlights many of the issues faced by districts which are here in Long Island. Another inconsistency that a school district that had a budget variances from 4 to 11% to actual expenditures stated that we commend the board and administration for taking positive actions in managing the district's financial condition. Yes, these districts were small in size. They're much smaller than Commack, but why wasn't they commended for having monies in the millions of dollars as well that were not kept in line? Lastly, I'd like to bring the fact that the state has announced for 2016 that there will be a 0.7% tax cap, which is half of last year's property tax cap. Many districts will be faced with a 0%. It is our responsibility as board members to work within the tax cap and maintain the highest level of service possible. When we start our budgeting processes in March, we'll continue to analyze the budgeting processes and we'll welcome feedback from the community in order to support the money that we support the district and that we're all proud to maintain. Thank you for your attendance in this meeting tonight and have a good night. I get a motion to adjourn, please.
Please.
Motion made by Mrs. Maciel, seconded by Ms. DeGiorno. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.